So good morning. Go straight onto the agenda. Agenda item number 1 is apologies for absence.
So, Chair, I have apologies from councillors Teresa Carberry, Paul Cunningham, Chris Dolphin, Rosetta Dolphin, Carol Ellis, Councillor Mansell needs to leave at 11, and Councillor Linda Thomas.
Councillor Bateman.
There we go. Councillor Ross Mansell.
Councillor Sean Bibby.
Apologies, Madam Chair, I didn't hear that very well, but just to make sure, Paul Cunningham.
Councillor Glyn Banks.
Apologies from Councillor Pamela Banks. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor David Healy online.
Apologies, Chair. I have to leave at 4 p.m.
Councillor Dale Sylvester.
I have work this afternoon, Chair, so depending on how long the meeting goes, I might have to leave early. Okay.
Agenda item number 2, declarations of interest. That's to receive any declarations and advise the members accordingly.
So, Chair, we have a number of what I call mass declarations today. We have 2 items on the pension fund and an item on members' remuneration. There are a number of councillors, like officers, who are in the pension fund. We know who they are, so we will simply record for them that personal interest. It will save us time. And in relation to the schedule of remuneration, whilst we have to approve the schedule, members only have a personal interest in that. And so we will record that interest for all councillors. There may be specific ones, Chair, specific to either notices of motion or whatever, but those 3 we can see in advance, we can do en masse.
Okay, any further declarations of interest? Councillor Chris Bithell.
Thank you, Chair. I have a survivor's pension from the Clwyd Pension Fund, and I've also got a close family relative in the Clwyd Pension Fund. Thank you.
Councillor Billy Mullen.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to declare that I'm a member of the Clwyd Pension Fund as a member. Thank you.
I'll also declare an interest as I have a close family member in the Clwyd Pension Fund. Councillor Gina Madsen.
Thank you, Chair. Also a member of the Clwyd Pension Fund.
Just to recap, everyone that's in the Clwyd Pension Fund personally has been recorded. Councillor Ted Palmer.
Yeah, my wife and my partner and my daughter are in the Clwyd Pension Fund. Thank you.
Yes. So, agenda item number 4 is urgent matters as agreed by the Chair, and there are none. Item number 5, it's the Chair's communications. I think they were circulated. Oh, beg your pardon.
Yes.
Thank you. Eager, aren't I? Yeah. Thanks for that, Councillor Owen. We go back to agenda item number 3, which I clearly missed out there. Sorry about that. That's to confirm the record of the minutes of the meetings held on 12th May and 8th of June 2026, and these can be found on pages 5 to 18. We'll go by page. So page number 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, and 17. Councillor Coggins-Cogan.
Thank you, Chair. I passed a number of minor amends to democratic services earlier on. They're only just sort of minor things, so I don't want to bring them up, but just to say that when they're approved, they'll be incorporated into the minutes. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that. Councillor Sean Bibby.
Yeah, formally move, Madam Chair, subject to the amendments put forward by Councillor Coggins-Cogan.
That's been moved. If we have a seconder, Councillor Coggins-Cogan, and a show of hands in favour. That looks unanimous. Now we go on to the Chair's communications that were circulated on Monday. Been up to quite a few interesting things. One that struck me, that rang a personal thing with me, was the relaunch of Headway Flintshire, which is for acquired brain injuries, and that's held in the Abercan in down in Moston there, in the little cafe there. And it was a really good afternoon and a really interesting group, and one that's needed across the whole of our communities, I think. Item number 6 is petitions, and this is the opportunity for members of the council to submit petitions on behalf of people in their ward. Once received, petitions are passed on to the appropriate chief officer for action and response. Are there any petitions to be presented today?
I think so, Chair. Thought so. There was press coverage suggesting there might be, Chair.
Okay.
Doesn't seem to be.
Just don't always believe what you read in the papers, isn't it? And then we go on to the principal items of business. Item number 7 is Young Carers Covenant, and that's a report from Councillor Christine Jones.
Diolch, Chair, bore da pawb. Today we are proposing that Flintshire County Council signs the Young Carers Covenant, a UK-wide commitment developed by Carers Trust to improve the lives of young carers. Signing the covenant would demonstrate Flintshire's clear support for these young people. The covenant is a shared promise across public services and communities to recognise and support young carers, children and young people under 18 and young adult carers up to 25, who provide unpaid care for family or friends. Many take on responsibilities far beyond their years, impacting their health, well-being, education and future opportunities. Across the UK, there are around 1 million young carers under 18 and 600,000 young adult carers. Some provide up to 50 hours of care per week. The impacts are significant. 1 in 3 struggle to balance caring with education, missing an average of 27 school days per year. Young adult carers are 38% less likely to gain a degree. Young carers achieve fewer GCSEs and are less likely to meet expected levels at Key Stage 2. 36% experience bullying, 56% report psychological distress, and 44% feel stressed. 28% have thought about self-harm. 37% experience food poverty. Many miss out on friendships, social activities, and key childhood experiences. The covenant focuses on what young carers say matters most, including balancing education, accessing health and well-being support, having time to rest, and feel recognised and valued. In Flintshire, identified young carers have increased by 368.5% since 2019, with around 800 currently supported, including some as young as 4. We commissioned the NUCAS Young Carers Service, which provides assessments, one-to-one and group support, respite, and works with partners to ensure young carers are recognised and supported. However, signing the covenant goes beyond statutory duties. It is a public commitment to these young people. We are joined today by 3 young carers. We have Will, we have Samuel, and we have Izzy. By signing the covenant, the council would strengthen collaboration across services and partners and ensure that young carers in Flintshire are recognised, supported and given equal opportunities. This is an opportunity to take a meaningful step in supporting some of the most resilient yet vulnerable members of our community. I would now like to hand over to Izzy, to Samuel and to Will, because they want to say a few words. So, welcome the 3 of you. Deal.
Hello, so I'm Izzy. I'm 13 years old. And I'd just like to talk a little bit about my experiences as a young carer. So first, I have a severely disabled brother and a mom with bipolar. And I think young carers has helped me a lot with just being able to provide a place to go. To make new friends, experience new things, and just allow me to have more of a normal life. I think it's a really good place to go. Like I said, it gives me a break from home. It's gave me so many new experiences that I don't think I would have been able to experience if it weren't for the help of young carers. So this is why I'm here today, just in hopes that this can continue and make a better environment for other people that may go through this in the future.
Hello, my name is Will. I'm similar to Izzy. I'm here to talk about my experience as a young carer. Before I got into the service of young carer, I was spiralling. My grades were slipping. I was missing school. I was on a half timetable because I couldn't deal with my brother, who has ADHD. He is severely problematic at times. So I was having to skip school, take days off school just to help out my parents to deal with him. I found it really hard until I joined Young Carers. They have helped me come on leaps and bounds. I would not be here today if it was not for them. I was in myself. I was hiding. I would not be able to speak in front of this many people in a million dreams. But they have truly helped me come out of my shell and get so many different life-changing experiences. They really do help with any sort of mental health problem I have had throughout the years. They're currently helping me now because, I mean, I probably wouldn't be able to stand here if Kelly was not right next to me. But I do find it really hard to deal with my brother. Still today, he still has problems. But even though I am 17, they're still helping me through it.
Hello, my name is Samuel. I am 9 and I'm a young carer for my mum. I help to look after my 2 younger brothers. One has conditional learning needs. I have been coming to young carers for nearly 2 years and it means so much to me. I love coming to young carers group. It so much. It is time for me. Away from home, and I have made friends. I don't get to see my friends outside of school. Coming to young carers group makes me feel lighter, excitement, and so much fun. My school teacher says she knows when I am going to young carers group because I am very happy and bubbly. At a young carers group, I learn first aid, and I am really proud of this. I really want to learn to cook to help my mum and brothers. I have so much fun at group.
Well, thank you all for coming here today and talking to us all and sharing your experiences. You all did marvellous. It is a bit frightening looking out at that lot, isn't it, from up here? So well done to everyone. Councillor Christine Jones.
Diolch. Da iawn, Will. Da iawn, Izzy. And da iawn, Samuel. You were absolutely amazing. Brilliant. I'd like to formally move the recommendation that's in our report, that full council recognises and values the critical contribution made by young carers and demonstrates its commitment to supporting them by becoming a signatory to the Carers Trust Young Carers Covenant. Formally move.
Councillor Gladys Healy online.
Thank you, Chair. I want to second this because this is a worthwhile cause. Our young carers, I hear them speak and it really pulls at my heartstrings. I am really happy that Councillor Christine Jones has brought this to the council, and this covenant will show how passionate Flintshire is for young people, young carers, and help them. And this is a fantastic cause. Thank you very much. I second this.
Councillor Coggins-Cogan.
Thank you, Chair. The protocol in the chambers, I address all comments to you, but with your discretion, I'd like to speak directly to the young carers. We've just heard a couple of minutes ago about the challenges that you face and sort of particular sort of education challenges. I want you all to know, because as young people, you won't maybe get this yet. Education is lifelong. Your life will not change or end if you don't get the GCSEs you want, you don't get the A-levels you want, you don't get into university when you're 18 or 19. It's a secret that all the adults know, but we don't tell children because there's an enormous amount of pressure on you to do as well as you can as early on to succeed. It does not matter. Education is lifelong. So if you don't get what you are striving for now, you have a second chance, you have a third chance, you have a fourth chance. And education is the thing that unlocks your life. So I just wanted to make that point. Back to the chair. This is not, I've already spoken to the chief officer this morning, so this is not a gotcha question at all. It's partly because of the young people that we have here today. The increase has gone from 120 to 800 young carers. How has our funding mapped along that? Has it stood still? Has it increased by the that equivalent amount of 368%? Because otherwise this will just be a paper pledge. These young people who have come here today deserve more than us just signing a bit of paper and feeling good about ourselves. We owe these people the best start in life because they are taking on work that the state and local authorities should be doing. We shouldn't be expecting nor relying upon young people to look after people on our behalf, which is what we are doing. This is no way me not being grateful for your work because it's incredibly useful, but I want to make sure you get all the support that we can offer you. And that means It's lovely to invite you here and sign a bit of paper. What does it mean? And I want to make sure you get money, you get resources, and you get real support. And whatever you're getting now, you want to ask for more. We're a small group here, just 3 of us, but we get lots done because we whinge, we complain. You can hear them there, see? So you've got to do the same. Do not be quiet. Fight, speak up, be the squeaky wheel that needs the oil. Thank you, Chair.
Just going to bring Chief Officer Craig in.
Thank you very much, and thanks for the question. My starting point has to be to thank the young people who've come today for their bravery to stand here in front of us all, the bravery to tell their story, but to actually make this really real, because you're quite right, Councillor, this isn't about signing a piece of paper. It has to translate into what practical support do we provide to our young carers? What's their daily lived experience? So firstly, I just want to thank you guys. Amazing job this morning, and thank you for everything you do. I have to be really transparent. So last year in 2025, we recommissioned our young carers contract. It was previously provided to NewKiss, and NewKiss were successful in their bid. So they continue to provide what I would say that we can demonstrate, and we've heard today, excellent, high quality support for young carers at incredible value, financial value, and for the local authority. It is the case, as you point out, Councillor, that the figures speak for themselves around that increase. It's really positive that we're reaching out through NewKiss and identifying and supporting more young carers. But the reality is that the funding has remained the same. So when we awarded the contract, it was at the same amount within the same financial envelope. I can't speak for NewKiss, but we work really closely with them and meet regularly with them. I think if they were here, they would say that finances are a significant challenge for them, and they're very proactive. They get out there, they fundraise, they apply for any funding that they can get, but it's becoming a much more difficult environment to secure funding. And I think that it is a challenge for them, and we will need to continue to pay close attention that they're able to provide the services that our young carers need within the resources that they have.
Councillor Chris Biffle.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And I'm very pleased to see the young people here with us today and see this particular item on the agenda. For a number of years, I chaired these Children's Services Forum. And again, we used to meet the young people and the young carers then. In those days, it was Bernardo, I think, who ran the service for us, but NewKiss have done it in more recent years. And it's a great service, which is highly valued by the young people themselves, as we've heard today. And again, you know, the numbers are so significant and have grown existentially, haven't they, over the past few years, has been indicated in the report, and indeed from what has been said by Councillor Christine Jones today. And again, we owe so much to these young people, and so do their brothers, sisters, and parents in many cases. You know, in many cases, it's a case of role reversal. You know, young people are looking after the parents in some cases, rather than the parents running and looking after the children. And again, when we hear of cases where children as young as 4 are doing this, it really hits home, doesn't it, really, and should do. And again, it's good to hear today, you know, what young people are experiencing in their daily lives, and for us to take that on board. Yes, more money is needed for this, definitely, and it's been a long established need, really, in that sense. And again, the actual savings to the state and so on by young people taking on these roles is phenomenal, really, but it needs to be addressed, and it's needed to be addressed for many years. So I sincerely hope that more funding can be found for this, to give young people in this situation a better deal, really, in their own personal lives, and that they're not affected by this for the rest of their lives. So thank you very much indeed for coming along and explaining what you do and what your situation is. It's made us, I think, again, or reminded us of what you do on a daily basis for your family members, your friends, and so on. And that's very much appreciated. Thank you very much indeed.
Councillor Glyn Banks.
Thank you very much, Chair. And first of all, I'd like to, as everybody else has done as well, thank you very much for the three of you for coming here today. You're representing everybody else who's a young carer in Flintshire, and not just Flintshire, everywhere. There's thousands of you out there, and you know we salute every one of you. So just big thank you to that. Also thank you to Craig and the team, and what's the name on the end? Sorry. Ellie, well done to you, because obviously you're a big help to them. You can see that. And I love your hair, by the way. Love some of that myself. But yeah, just thanks all around. The team in Flintshire are absolutely amazing. And, you know, it's without you all helping them, they've got somebody to help them. You don't feel as though you're alone, which is really good to know. And thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Any other speakers? See any hands raised in the room or online? Okay, we'll move to the vote. All those in favour?
Look, it's everybody in the room, Chair, and I think it's everybody online as well. That's unanimous.
Unanimous. Thank you very much. Believe Councillor Christine Jones is going to come forward now to sign the covenant. Would the young carers like to come up as well?
So first of all, a big thank you from me, young carers, for coming and sharing those experiences with us. Very moving. So thank you very much for that. On behalf of the County Council, I'm now going to sign the Young Carers Covenant. Thank you very much. Thank you. Sorry, can we just shuffle down a little bit more?
Thanks, Rhoda.
Okay, we'll go straight on to agenda item number 8, and that's the Wales Pension Partnership Inter-Authority Agreement, or the IAA, and that's going to be, the report's going to be brought to us by Phil Latham, the Head of Clwyd Pension Fund, and Gareth Owens, the Chief Officer of Governance. Phil?
Thank you, Chair, and good morning. I'm not too sure how I can follow the last presentations. There was a tear in my eye. But back to business. Yeah, I take members first of all to page 26 of the pack, which is the recommendations for the report, which I will paraphrase now. So we're asking council to approve the updated version of the Wales Pension Partnership Inter-Authority Agreement, which I might refer to as the IAA. And that's in Appendix A of the report, and that's all about investment pooling, and I'll say a bit more about that later. And if that is agreed, there's then changes necessary to the Council's constitution itself that relates to the changes in the inter-authority agreement. Members will also see two other recommendations there. They're relating to delegations to officers for minor amendments. Although everything we talk about today is coming into force through legislation on the 30th of June, we didn't actually receive the statutory guidance till very late on the 29th of June. We're still trawling through it. We don't think there's any changes that we will need to make any, but I'm hoping the council will still support those two recommendations for us as well, where we just finalise and check where everything is still correct. I always just like to remind council that the inter-authority agreement itself has been agreed by the Clwyd Pension Fund Committee and now by the other 7 pension fund committees who are also signing this document in Wales, and also the councils, the other 7 councils in Wales. And the Clwyd Pension Fund Committee and the Constitution and Democratic Services Committee have agreed the constitution changes in this report. I just give now just a little bit more background. The inter-authority agreement was first agreed back in 2017. I'm sure some council members here might remember. And that included the governance structure, which was fit for the purpose under those regulations, and it was all about investment pooling. It introduced new bodies, a joint governance committee, a JGC, and that's for the chairs of the 8 pension funds of the councils. And it was supported by an officer working group, and that was made up of Section 151 officers and practitioners like myself. But the UK government now have decided to make these statutory changes that now means that all investment implementation decisions and advice must be taken from a company authorised by the FCA. And in Wales, council will remember previous agenda items that a new corporate entity has been built in Wales, Wales Pension Partnership Investment Management Company, WPP IMCO for short, and of which the 8 administrative authorities, including Flintshire County Council, will be shareholders of that company once it's finally gone through the authorisation process, which we hope is any week now. So as a result of this, the inter-authority agreement has been revised. There's new terms of reference for the groups I mentioned, the JGC, the OWG, and we have the new shareholder forum. I'll probably draw council's attention to page 29 to 30 that does summarise the changes. I'd also mention Appendix C on page 108. There is a good summary there of all the new of the company's role, the JGC, the OWG, and the shareholder forum within the document as well. Just briefly again, in terms of the changes, under the old arrangements, the JGC's responsibilities would be to appoint an operator, monitor that operator that would look after all the infrastructure. And then the JGC would also then decide which investment funds went into that model, with agreement jointly between the 8 on the JGC. All that is going now away. That is all in future will be company decisions. So as a local authority of fund, what we're required to do in the future is set our investment objectives. And alongside that, what we can do is set a very high level asset allocation. Thereafter, it's over to the investment pool, WPP IMCO in our case, to implement that strategy. Just in terms of how that affects the IAA, I would refer members really starting at page 73 of the pack that goes through the schedules again in some more detail. And again, as you go through this, you'll see the number of red lines, number of the things we won't be doing anymore, but new things that are added. So, for example, on page 73 there, you'll see number 4 talks about investment strategy, and that's still a reserve matter. And as you go through the schedules, you'll see Schedule 4, Schedule 3 and Schedule 4 is again about the JGC. And again, you can see there, as I've described, the changes that are being made. Schedule 5 on page 80 gives council some more clarity on what will be discussed at the new JGC. Still responsible investment, climate, local investment will all be discussed in this forum, as well as doing jointly the oversight of the new company. The other schedules then, the officer working group obviously has to change in line with the JGC. And then just if you think where there's a lot less for petitioners to do, we have this new role on the shareholder forum, and the shareholder forum is outlined on page 94. Just in terms of governance on the shareholder forum, and just to make it absolutely clear, in the constitution, revised constitution, if agreed, I'll be representing the authority on that forum. But that forum does not come to a joint decision. It's individual votes, and we try to make it clear in the constitution that especially for the important votes on there, I need to go back to pension fund committee and act on the decision of pension fund committee. But it is an individual vote. Just another point just to make to council that's in the report, there will be a review of this. We plan to have a review in 12 to 18 months. This is a big change to how we work. So we do need to review it really just to ensure that these new arrangements we put in place do prove to be fit for the future. I think the intention and the hope is that will be done before the next electoral cycle. But it has taken longer than expected to introduce these new arrangements. So whether this is feasible or not will remain to be seen. But at some point in time, there will need to be a review. So that's all the inter-authority agreement part of it. As I said, we then need to make changes to the constitution. So then on pages 31 to 34 of the report, just explain those changes. Some I've already gone through around what it means for the JGC, the OWG, the new shareholder forum. And it's the constitution then is also ensuring that all the roles and responsibilities are properly explained for the pension fund committee, officer delegations. It's not just the LGPS senior officer involved, monitoring officer, section 151 officer, you will see mentioned there. So it's all correct for the new structure and this new client shareholder arrangement that we now have. So I try to summarise it the best I can. There's quite a lot of change there. I'm here to clarify things if I can and answer questions.
Yeah, at this point, I'd just like to bring in Chief Officer for Governance, Gareth Owens.
Thank you, Chair. I will be brief because Phil has given you a more detailed summary of the proposals. The arrangements between ourselves and the pension fund are documented heavily within the Constitution. So all of the governance is spelt out. You can see the level of detail in which it is spelt out. And it is that reason that it is coming to council this morning, because they're part of the Constitution. Only council can change the Constitution. Phil has said that these have been considered by the Clwyd Pension Fund. It is fair to say that there were some reservations and concerns at the Clwyd Pension Fund. Indeed, it went round the loop twice. So the Clwyd Pension Fund took its responsibilities very seriously. Challenged some of the proposals and sent them back to see if they could be improved. We got some improvements, not everything we were after, but we got some improvements. And then I think the Clwyd Pension Fund took a pragmatic decision to recognise that we needed to move forward with the arrangements. Phil has touched on an important safeguard that I was going to mention, and I will just reiterate. when we were discussing these arrangements, both at the Clwyd Pension Fund and at Constitution and Democratic Services Committee, we talked about the relationship between the role that Phil will step into or adopt around representing the council, and who has primacy. Is it Phil or is it the Clwyd Pension Fund? And he has already mentioned, but I will reiterate, that what we have done is built into these arrangements that key matters need prior approval. And if those of you that are looking at the documents online, if you do a quick search, you will see that the word prior approval comes up 5 times in different places through these arrangements, and in consultation comes up 11 times through there, to make sure that it is the will of the Clwyd Pension Fund that is being represented at those All Wales meetings on our collective behalf. That's us as Flintshire County Council, but also the other councils who were mentioned, members of Clwyd Pension Fund and the other organisations as well. So we have tried to build in that safeguard, and there was some discussion about it at the committee. We got to a place where we said we needed to just take that. We knew what the sentiment was, and we needed to take that sentiment away and reflect that wording, which we think we have done within the documentation. So, Chair, likewise, happy to take questions if there are any, because I realise there's quite a lot there.
Councillor Chris Biffle.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. As has been highlighted in the report, the UK government's local government pension scheme, England and Wales fit for purpose consultation, and the subsequent legislation, which, as we've heard, took effect from yesterday, the 30th of June, the Wales Pension Partnership administering authorities have had to develop a business case, a key element of which is the creation of a Wales Pension Partnership Investment Company, which has been approved by the Financial Conduct Authority to manage the pooled assets of the 8 partner authorities in Wales. To effect these changes, the existing inter-authority agreement has had to be updated and supplemented by a shareholder agreement and a client agreement, which have already been approved by the Clwyd Pension Fund Committee on the 6th of March. Furthermore, the Flintshire County Council's constitution must be updated to incorporate the delegations and other governance arrangements resulting from this agreement, as they relate to Flintshire County Council in its capacity as an administering authority, shareholder and client for the Clwyd Pension Fund. The report seeks the Council's approval of the updated inter-authority agreement, the changes to the Council's constitution, and also asks for the approved delegation to enable minor amendments to be carried out in the final documents. Can I move the recommendations which are on page 26? 1, that the Council approves the updated Wales Pension Partnership Inter-Authority Agreement as set out in Appendix A. 2, that the Council delegates approval of making any further amendments that may be needed to the Inter-Authority Agreement to the head of the Clwyd Pension Fund in consultation with the Pension Fund Committee Chair. 3, that the Council approves of the changes to the Constitution as set out in Appendix D to reflect the updated Wales Pension Partnership governance arrangements. 4thly, that the Council delegates any further non-substantial changes or changes relating to the final legislation and guidance or contents of the legal agreements to be made by the Chief Governance Officer in consultation with the head of the Group Pension Fund and the Chair of the Pension Fund Committee. I move, Chair.
Councillor Anthony Wren. Councillor Biffle, can you turn your microphone off, please? Thank you. Councillor David Mackey.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to ask some very basic questions, if I may. There's a great deal of detail here, and I appreciate that the government's hand is behind this. I would like to ask, first of all, why? Why are we doing all this? Is it to remove likelihood of fraud? Is it in order to what is the purpose behind it? What is the government trying to achieve? So why are we doing it? The other question I'd like to ask is, what are we going to see as a result? Are we going to see increased money coming out of the fund and being made available? The Clwyd Pension Fund affects so many people and so many organisations, and we're always worried if we belong to those organisations that the latest assessment of the fund may increase the contributions we have to make as employers or reduce them. Will those be affected by this scheme? And I want to ask something else. We've heard of lots of organisations and official bodies which seem to be coming in. I want to ask, why are we having shareholders? And I'd also like to ask, are there going to be more expenses because we seem to have even more different groups who are involved in this system now? Thank you, Chair. Did that sound good?
Yes.
I think the first question was why and what the government are trying to achieve here. They're trying to just achieve that. There's a couple of main things, I think. They're trying to achieve more efficiency across the LGPS and better governance in general. Trying to deliver a lower cost model, lower fees if possible, through basically joint procurement. If everybody's buying it, just basic principles, rather than each fund doing their own thing. There's other things we haven't really talked about today so much, but local investment is key to the government as well. So they're trying to build 6 bodies now that can also deliver local investment, WPP IMCO being one of them. So that's generally speaking on behalf of the government here, in terms of what the government is trying to achieve. What it means to us as a fund, well, hopefully we will benefit from some lower fees by working together. It should not impact us, our main objectives. It should assist on our main objectives. So, as I said, you linked it back to contributions and what employers are paying that, and that's all done through an actuarial valuation. And what's the key assumption there is what investment return we're going to receive in the future. If we don't get it through investments, then employers have to pay more. It shouldn't impact that in any way. We're still setting our investment objectives and our asset allocation. The advice might come from the pool, but that is still the committee's decision, and it's that will drive the returns. The implementation part is a smaller part of that outcome. Yes, if it's implemented poorly, it will have some impact on that, but it's a relatively small percentage of that impact compared with the asset allocation strategy, which the government are quite clear that remains our responsibility. You mentioned about being a shareholder and why that is. I think we brought this to council previously, where the council agreed to be a shareholder of WPP IMCO. So we had to comply with the government's requirements, we had to create this new corporate entity. But the lower new corporate entity, we as the 8 administrating authorities, pension fund authorities, will be shareholders of that new entity. So we're doing things like agreeing the business plan, appointing directors, etc. So we have good control of that as the 8 authorities. You mentioned cost. Does this cost? Well, of course, was a cost for creating a new company. That's all gone into the budget of and within the business plan of the Clwyd Pension Fund that was presented to the Clwyd Pension Fund committee. So there's cost of the new company. We have to put regulatory capital into that company to be a shareholder, and that's a requirement of the FCA. And there's some costs, although they're a lot lower than previously, of being in a joint arrangement through the JGC, because you still need a host authority, a monitoring officer. There's some cost of administration of that joint committee as well. So, but in the long term, hopefully there'll be other savings that will pay for that. Is the company also giving advice as well, and that hopefully would be cured through that at a lower cost than our current arrangements. So I hope I've answered all the questions there. If I've missed anything, Chair.
Chair, I asked Phil to explain this in words that I would understand, and hopefully that means members will be able to share my understanding as well. The investment management company, WPIM Co, will give us investment advice that previously we were paying for. So this is where the savings come from in advisor costs. We have set that up as a company of which we are a shareholder because it is a way of negotiating the procurement obligations upon us. Collectively, we own that company. The 8 pension fund administering authorities in Wales now own that company, so they can contract with that company directly in the way that we do with Newydd, for example. So that's why we have shareholders. We are by becoming a shareholder of that company, it makes the procurement of services through that company easier and cheaper for us.
Councillor Ted Palmer.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. As a former member of this committee and previous chair and member of the JGC and chair of the JGC, I can confirm that the Clwyd Pension Fund has always been an influential fund or an influential committee within that framework. Go back to what Phil had said, that the legislation came from central government. They wanted an all UK pool. You know, the JGC and the Clwyd Pension Fund felt we wanted to keep our own identity as a Welsh fund or as a Welsh pool, and that's what we got. And we have got, basically, we have been influential in the setup of that company, and we've covered our own safety within that in the time that I was there. And I'm pretty sure that the new chair and the rest of the committee have done the same. So you can have every confidence that the interests of the Clwyd Pension Fund will always be first. Thank you.
Councillor Ibbotson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think it would serve the council well to be aware of the discussions that have happened at the Pension Fund Committee regarding this. The principle of pooling, first of all, is something that there is quite rightly scepticism across this chamber for. At the moment, there are 8 pension funds in Wales, local government pension funds in Wales. After this, there will be 6 across England and Wales together. It is a huge reduction in the number of effective funds managing their own assets. And the reason for that, and I shall respond to Councillor Mackey's question perhaps slightly less diplomatically than the head of the Clwyd Pension Fund, is that the Treasury wants more control over these assets and how they're invested. And it is easier to do that with fewer, larger bodies on a tighter leash. At the moment, the Clwyd Pension Fund has local investments in the Clwyd area. Local investments under the new strategy will be developers' house building projects in Swansea, and that will count as local investment for us. It is questionable at best, but that better serves the Treasury's interests. But on these specific issues in front of us today, there are 3 major problems that the committee had. The first perhaps won't concern this council too much, which is that the membership of the bodies that run this will not have representation for those councils which do not host the funds. In our case, that means Wrexham and Denbighshire. It does not have representation for the minor employers, such as community councils, and it does not have representation for scheme members, that is, pensioners. The committee wanted to see that. We asked for it and were told, no, but we'll think about it in the future, maybe, which is not exactly a stirring response. If this is ever going to get sorted, it needs to be sorted now when we set it up. This is our moment of maximum leverage. The second issue, and I invite members to turn to page 75 of the document pack, Joint Governance Committee matters. And on the third point, members will see that one of the duties of the Joint Governance Committee is number 3, formulation, review and revision of those policies and procedures within Schedule 5, which members can find on page 80. And first on those is a responsible investment policy. So that means not investing in modern slavery, for example, companies which exploit Uyghur forced labour in China. Unfortunately, those policies set by the Joint Governance Committee, by the very wording of the Inter-Authority Agreement and the Shareholder Agreement, which is separate to this and not before us today, mean that those policies are not binding on the company that actually decides how our efforts, our finances are invested. It is purely advisory. And they don't even advise the company that does it directly, these policies. These policies are advised to us. We can then set our own policies and we're expected to just adopt what the Joint Governance Committee says. And those policies in turn are only advisory on the people who decide how the assets are actually invested. There is no way that we can say we will not invest in these companies where there is proven evidence that they are involved in forced labour. And members will be aware of British companies, American companies, where there are very credible allegations of that that are not being addressed. So that questions, well, what's the point in having the committee if it's so wishy-washy and advisory? Why are we paying the money to do that? The third and final point is on page 115 of the document pack, and the monitoring officer made reference earlier to the addition, which I welcome, regarding prior approval of reserved matters. What it does not include is what the Pension Fund Committee asked for, which is to say that the delegation to officers to vote on things at the new investment management company is subject where the committee has issued a mandate, including on things which are not those particularly important issues, but on policy matters, for example.
Sorry, Councillor Ibbotson, just a minor point. You're supposed to be addressing me.
Madam Chair, I am addressing my words to you. The crucial factor is that, Madam Chair, I'm being interrupted again. The crucial point is that there must be a mandate from the committee which is enforceable on officers where that committee is being, where that's being issued by the committee. I therefore move an amendment that we insert in that part on page 115, subject to instructions issued by the Pension Fund Committee after the shareholder matters and voting points, such that the mandates issued by the committee,
just
where
let
they
you know, 30
are
seconds
reflected.
over, Councillor Ibbotson. Thank you. Is there a seconder for? Yes, there is. Councillor Sandsworth. And can I bring Phil back in to respond?
Just in response to that particular amendment, it's probably Gareth might be better placed, but I can just give this council of assurance that I wouldn't be going to the shareholder for making any decisions that are not been agreed by the committee. I just wouldn't do it. It's I know sometimes it's difficult to put things in writing. There was a lot there. Sorry.
You're not going to be there forever.
That's true, but I hope the.
Yeah, it's not an open debate. You've stood up and you've said what you've said. Phil's replying to that.
I'm not sure if there was any questions. I correct something that Councillor Ibbotson said about the number of, it was probably just misspoken, number of, we used to have 8 pools, investment pools in England and Wales, and the government decided to reduce that to 6. But that's investment pools, not funds. Yeah. So we still have 86 funds, and we still have the 8 in Wales, just to be clear. And just to be clear around the relationship, we are a client of this new company. This new company needs to deliver our objectives, each individual objectives of each of the 8 funds in Wales. That pool needs to give it, the relationship is direct. It's between us and the new company. We've used responsible investment as an example, and this is one of the most topical topics across the whole of the LGPS. Nothing that's been said here hasn't been said in 86 councils across England and Wales. What's gone into the guidance and the legislation, the intent of the government, is that the pool should deliver, again, the objectives of each fund. However, it's slightly caveated there in terms of pooling, because the Councillor Ibbotson is right to a certain extent. They don't have to do it if they think it's going to be at a greater cost to do this. So we can't go back to every fund wanting something different. Basically, it just can't be doing it, because that would drive the cost up. But what we'd hope to do as a joint governance committee, again, is to try to come to some more of agreement. But if Councillor Ibbotson had attended the briefing session we had the company chief investment officer came to our last committee. There was a briefing session after that committee specifically on our responsible investment, where we explained what we require as a fund and what we need going forward. And it was quite clear, we need that as a fund, we need you to deliver that. And it's clear to me that they will deliver that. I think the relationship the arrangements are probably stronger and better for us than they were before, in my view. Try to cover some of the points there.
I have a list of 3 speakers, but that was the original recommendations. So I'm seeking any speakers to the amendment. Councillor Andrew Parkhurst.
Yeah, Chair. I'd like clarification, please, on the subject of responsible investment. So if this council was concerned, let's take one example, let's take investment in companies, Israeli companies on the West Bank, who are perhaps acting illegally, and this council, did not want its pension fund to be invested in those companies, how would the wishes of council be implemented with this proposal?
We would put that within our preferences. It would have to be now within our investment strategy, and we would inform WPP and Co that we do not wish to be invested in those companies.
Any other speakers to the amendment?
And I think it's important, Chair, just to add to Mr. Latham's answer, that view would be represented by Mr. Latham in conversations. So it would be a conversation with the Clwyd Pension Fund to start with, where we talked about approval of those policies. And then those views would be the views that he would relay, or his successor, whoever holds that position, would relay then through the shareholder forum to the investment company.
Could be through that route or through the OWG, because there might be something that we want to discuss there jointly, because if everybody did it, it would be more efficient. But through whichever forum, the company's there to deliver what we required as a pension fund, whatever that policy is. We just need to document it clearly as we do within our ISS.
Councillor Coggins-Cogan.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just going to build on foundation of my group leader, his question. Obviously, the word preference sort of raises slight alarm bells. It's such an order from the Foreign Secretary to the ambassador becomes a request to the ambassador to the UN, which becomes a sort of a note. It sort of sounds diluted from the top. So this preference that gets relayed to the whichever route you're talking about, I'm presuming then it could be, I'm not going to say ignored because I don't want to be rude, but it could be considered and then decided against. I'm assuming that's why it's a preference. So what is that mechanism? Would it be a majority vote? So it could be the other local authorities in the fund might think, well, actually, it would be a good idea if we used X company because they provide cheaper products and therefore their sales are higher. Or is there some sort of veto? Because I am concerned that we could find ourselves in a position where we have very strong ethical objections to something and they are then represented as a preference. I'm sure this is covered and it's just me not being fully conversant with the document. So I would just like an explanation of that, please. Thank you, Chair.
I use the word deliberately because that's the word that's in the statutory guidance, and it does come back to the way it's written. The company has the final decision. The company has the final decision on implementation, and this is an implementation. They do have that final decision, but we are both a client and a shareholder of that company. So unless they've got really good reason, I forget the precise word in the guidance, and I haven't got it in front of me. But the company's got to have really good reason not to do it. Now, it could be the good reason is that probably not for that example, but we as a client want the company to do X. X will cost the company $1 million. I'm making numbers up now. And the rest of the shareholders and the other client, hold on a minute, just doing this for the Clwyd Pension Fund, it's going to cost us all. So there's some safeguards there in terms of one fund doing something that's going to really impact on the business of the company itself. But the sort of examples you've got, all I can say is we're a client and we're a shareholder and we influence the company individually in that way. And I'm confident, although I can't go through any private conversations I've had with the chief investment officer, which I do have of the new company, I'm confident we can get delivered exactly what we want delivered within reason. And it's a partnership as well. There's part of a partnership here. We all live in partnerships, but the principle here is we're a client. That company delivers what it wants for us as an individual client. Is that as clear as I can be?
Councillor Ted Palmer, but are you speaking to the amendments, please? Yeah.
Yes. Thank you, Chair. I speak to the amendment because this has already been to the Clwyd Pension Fund Committee and been ratified and voted on, which is why it's come to us. So it seems to me as if someone's lost the vote, he's having another bite at the cherry. That's the way I feel it. I think it's the wishes of the majority of the committee, not one or two. Thank you.
Councillor Biffle, but this might be your
Well, Chair, Councillor Bithell can't speak on the amendment other than as he gets the right of reply at the end. So if there's anybody else that wishes to speak on the amendment,
is there any other
then
speakers?
they would come in before Councillor Bithell because he gets the right of reply. So he's the last speaker. So if you call him now, you're cutting out anybody else from speaking to the amendment.
Okay, Councillor Richard Jones, is this to the amendment?
Yeah, it is. So in relation to the amendment, I think it's important that we listen. It's such an important issue that I think it's important we listen to members of that committee, past members and professional officers such as Phil Latham and Gareth Owen, the monitoring officer, and not really to the ramblings of a member that obviously has very obscure views. I think it's really important for the council to understand that these people, this is their jobs. This is Phil Latham's job. The monitoring officer is a professional officer who will give us advice. And I think that advice needs to be taken seriously, as well as the advice from the past members and present members of the Clwyd Pension Fund, rather than those ramblings. Thank you, Chair.
Just to say, Councillor Jones, I don't think it's fair to say or describe somebody's opinions as ramblings. I'd just like to point that out now before we go any further into the meeting this afternoon, where we've got more contentious topics to speak on. So I'd just like to set that out clearly now. Thank you very much. Are there any other speakers? There is. Councillor Swash.
Yeah, just briefly to clarify, because I was on the committee when these discussions happened. Councillor Palmer suggested that Councillor Ibbotson was sort of carrying on a discussion that he had had and that he had disagreements. The pension fund itself had disagreements, and that is why, as the monitoring officers outlined, the pension fund essentially went back and asked for changes. Now, some of those changes haven't been made, some of them have been, but the point you made about Councillor Ibbotson sort of carrying this on and sort of reiterated by Councillor Jones referencing obscure views, these were the views of the pension fund, which is why it went back again and some changes were then made based on the views of the committee.
Okay, any more speakers to the amendments? Councillor Wren.
Thank you. As a member of the committee, Pension Clwyd Fund Committee, I believe the amendment is unnecessary. The recommendations of the substantive are perfectly fine. Thank you.
And then Councillor Crispin for the right of reply, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Councillor Ibbotson, made the points very strongly in the Clwyd Pension Fund Committee, and they were discussed and they were supported by other members there, and we understood exactly where he's coming from. But basically, with the inter-authority agreement, this is not a complete rewrite of the agreement. This is an updating and an amendment of the existing inter-authority agreement to enable it to actually function and to be reconciled with the new legislation. So that was the position that we were in. Okay, and we could have rejected the whole thing, and there were members, I think, who were prepared to do that. That we simply don't join in by signing the inter-authority agreement, and that would have meant we'd be outside the tent, literally, in terms of the All Wales Partnership, really. And again, I think the overriding view at the end of the day was that it's better to be in there and be able to discuss these matters and put the points forward, including issues regarding responsible investment, which we all take seriously. And to be fair, I mean, the committee, the fund committee, has a very advanced policy regarding responsible investment compared with other authorities in Wales. They're coming on board now. They've passed their own now. Again, it's not as strong as ours, particularly, but again, there are moves afoot, I think, really, to make those particular changes in that forum. And again, I'm particularly optimistic about that, because again, the vibes.
Sorry, Councillor Biffle. Councillor Ibbotson.
Sorry, Madam Chair. It's a point of personal explanation because Councillor Biffle has misunderstood the amendment. He's talking about the inter-authority agreement.
The monitoring officers just said it comes afterwards. So,
well, that's why I wasn't shouting out, but you called on me, Madam Chair.
So, Chair, though, it is fair to say that the amendment is quite specific, which is about the relationship between the head of Clwyd Pension Fund and the Pension Fund Committee rather than about the principle of the arrangements. So the amendment is should the head of Clwyd Pension Fund be subject to instructions issued by the CPF when representing the views of the Clwyd Pension Fund with the pooled arrangements.
Yes, again, this is fully debated, and it will, as Phil has given his statement here today, that will be put forward. Our views, whatever they are, they are on a particular issue, they will be put forward in the strongest of terms. And again, in the discussion we had, which again Phil referred to, where the chief executive of IMCO came up to meet us as a pension fund committee, again, these views of ours were put very, very strongly to him. And he understands and has fully got the message and is completely supportive of our situation in regard to these particular issues, where we take a different view perhaps to others in relation to investments. So, you know, I'm assured. And at the end of the day, members, this was fully debated, fully discussed, and was passed by the Clwyd Pension Fund. This is, as has been suggested, another attempt to go back to where we were before, but the decision has been made and the recommendation has come forward from the Clwyd Pension Fund that the County Council does actually support us in this. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you. So we're going to move to the vote for the amendment, which Gareth has already read out. But
so just so that people are clear, and
Councillor Ibbotson.
Madam Chair, I'm grateful to you for coming to the point of personal explanation. As I was saying, Councillor Bithell and indeed other speakers appear to have misunderstood what I have said earlier in the debate. All the amendment concerns is whether or not, if the Clwyd Pension Fund Committee says, on this vote, vote this way, the person who goes to vote on the committee's behalf is bound by that. Should they be required to follow the instructions? Yes or no? Now, we have had a commitment that, oh, I will, but we ought, you know, what is the objection to saying that the decision-making body, which is appointed in law, its instructions should be followed? What objection is there to that? Because there's been an assurance that, oh, we'll do it anyway, but that assurance is only, you know, valid for as long as the current post holder remains in post. There is no rational reason not to include it.
So, Councillor Ibbotson,
the Pension Fund Committee was supportive of that position.
You've gone beyond explanation there. We are going to go to the vote now for the amendments, which Gareth will remind us of.
Well, Chair, Councillor Robertson has just re-explained it. Just though, for the sake of clarity, for everybody who's voting, pages 114 to 115 describe the delegated authority for the head of the Clwyd Pension Fund in relation to representing the council in these new pooled arrangements. The proposal, as you've just heard, is that where the Clwyd Pension Fund has expressed a view, that needs to be represented. There would still be, I would guess, if the Clwyd Pension Fund hasn't expressed a view and something crops up during the meeting, the head of the Clwyd Pension Fund would be able to exercise discretion, because of course you have to allow a measure of discretion to any negotiator to go ahead and to represent you within their discretion, which is why we appoint experienced negotiators. So that's just hopefully clarifying what the effect of what you're voting for. I know I'm going a bit beyond the wording, but I'm just trying to make sure that members are clear about the effect of what they're voting for.
So, going to have a show of hands in the room, please, for all those in favour of the amendment as outlined by Gareth.
1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7 in the room. Okay, Chair.
All those in line or online in favour, please.
Two, 3, 4, 4 online.
Okay, so all those in the room against the amendment, please raise your hands now.
Oh, wow. 2. 14 on the back. 8 in the room, Chair.
All those online against the amendment, please show your hands now. And for clarity, any abstentions, please? And online.
That's 11 for, 38 against and 1 abstention, Chair.
Okay. So the amendment is lost. So we go to the original recommendations, and I'll refer back to my list of speakers that I had before. And first on that list is Councillor Coggins-Cogan.
Good timing, thank you, Chair. My question was, I have a question, and then I'd like to propose an amendment to what's written here based on the answer, if that's all right, Chair. So I'd like your indulgence for allowing me to have a very minor second bite of the cherry. In the second recommendation, it suggests that council delegates approving or making any further minor amendments in consultation with the Pension Fund Committee Chair. Why is that not with the Pension Fund Committee itself? And by that, you may anticipate my recommendation in a second. Thank you.
Because, Chair, the Chair can give their views. For the committee to give its views, you'd have to convene a meeting. So there would then be a week-long debate or a week-long delay while we issue the drafted report, issue the papers and so on. So for it to be the committee rather than members of the committee can only express a view if it meets formally.
Okay, just on this occasion, but please be mindful, we have a lot of business to get through today. So.
Thank you very much for your indulgence, Chair, and my thanks to the Chief Executive and the Monitoring Officer. My recommendation would still be to delete the word Chair in recommendation 2. I'm not convinced by the argument that to have a full democratic discussion will just take too long. There's already in recommendation 4, there's a delegation to the chair of the pension fund, which I'm not contesting because I think that's more narrowly defined. It's only because I think recommendation 2 is, to my view, unacceptably ambiguous, and therefore it should go to the committee rather than just the chair. Thank you.
And do we have a seconder for that? Yeah, of course. Councillor Parkhurst. And any members who would like to speak to the amendment, please. Councillor Palmer.
Just for it's not a question, it's just seeking clarification of what Councillor Coggins-Cogan is trying to change. Thank you.
So, Chair, as I understand it, by deleting the word chair from recommendation 2, how the recommendation would read is that council delegates approve or delegates approving blah 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 in consultation with the pension fund committee. So the whole committee rather than just the chair of the committee. By just removing that one word, it changes it from being chair, currently Councillor Bithell, to the whole of the committee.
So
Councillor Mullin.
Can I just come back on that then, Chair?
No, sorry, Councillor Palmer said we've got a lot of business to get on with. Councillor Mullin.
Thanks, Chair. I'd just like to make the comment. I find this amendment irrelevant and not needed. Thank you.
Are there any other speakers to the amendments?
So Councillor Biffle has the right to.
And once again, it goes to Councillor Biffle to have the right of reply to the amendment. No? Yeah.
Yeah, I don't want to be particularly pedantic about this, but it's standard practice, I think, in this authority that, you know, between meetings and so on, if anything crops up which needs to be dealt with fairly quickly and efficiently, it's usually
Can we have less of the chatter in the room, please? Thank you.
it's usually the case that, you know, the matter is referred to the chief officer and the chair of the committee. There's no departure from that being suggested here. You know, quite frankly, I'm not precious about these things. It could go to the committee, but basically, as has been explained, these issues normally crop up where a decision has to be made fairly rapidly. And in those circumstances, it is standard practice in this council, regardless of what we're talking about, whichever particular area of the council's responsibility, that those matters are referred to the chief officer and the chair of the committee to make the decision. That's standard practice with due respect. Thank you.
Okay, so we go to vote on the amendment now. All those in the room in favour of the amendment, please raise your hand. All those online in favour of the amendment, please raise your hand.
It appears to be 4. Chair, could I just check with Councillor Roberts? He has his hand to the side of his face. Is that just the way he's sitting, or was that raising his hand? Yeah, I'm afraid we couldn't hear that, Councillor Roberts. You weren't voting, were you? No. No, he wasn't. Thank you. So that's 11-4, Chair.
All those in the room against the amendment, please raise your hand.
15 plus 13 is 28.
All those online against the amendment, please raise your hand. And any abstentions in the room and online, please.
So, Chair, that's 11-4, 39 against, 1 abstention.
Amendment falls. Okay, next on the original list is Councillor Linda Thew, and she's online. Councillor Thew, did you hear me?
I'm sorry, I've put my hand down. I don't wish to ask another question. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Councillor Richard Jones. This is to the original recommendations. You raised your hand previously to indicate you wanted to speak. You drawn as well. So that brings us to Councillor Andrew Parkhurst.
Yeah, Dioff Chair, just to add then a further few words to recommendation 2, but it's important that any changes made are reported back to the Pensions Committee, so that everything is transparent, which I'm sure will have widespread support. So I'd like to recommend the addition of the words that with any such amendments reported back to the committee. Thank you.
And do we have a seconder for that?
Chair, I'd like to second that. It would. I'm not sure if we're adding that to recommendation 2 or if we're suggesting as a 5th recommendation, so it captures the other minor changes that are proposed in recommendation 4. I'm a little bit surprised, as earlier on we heard in the debate how influential the pension fund committee is, and how well respected, and how they, they can really do their sort of stuff. But yet the administration councillors seemingly don't want the influence and wisdom of the committee to weigh in on any of these minor amendments. We've also had the chair of the committee say that he's ambivalent, but still spoke strongly against the suggested amendment, which I find quite puzzling. I just think this is a reasonable safeguard. It's not, point scoring or anything like that. We just want to make sure that changes that are made, even if they are minor, are reported back. It may be covered elsewhere, but I think it's important it's here as a recommendation, and then we all know where we are. Thank you, Chair.
Do we have any speakers for that amendment? Nope. Oh, Mike, Councillor Pearce online.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, I think that's a reasonable amendment. It gives total transparency, and also it provides an audit trail. So, although it may seem to be a minor amendment, any amendments should be recorded and reported back to the committee. So I will be supporting the amendment. Thank you.
There's no speakers, Chair.
Councillor Chris Biffle, right.
Chair, I've got no issue with that and no problem with that. And again, if it needs to be put in writing, put it in writing. But every confidence that these matters would be reported in due course to the next meeting. But I'm quite happy that be added. Thank you. The recommendation.
Councillor Wren, you were the seconder. You happy to accept that also? Yeah.
Chair, just for clarification, which is slightly changing the goalposts as we go along. The original suggestion from Councillor Parkhurst of an amendment was that this be an amendment to paragraph 2, recommendation 2. His seconder sought to change that slightly so that it'd be a 5th recommendation. Can we be clear, Chair, as to which it is? Certainly, from my own position, Chair, it would make, it would seem sensible that it is a 5th amendment, a fifth recommendation, so that if Phil has to report back, I have to report back. I'm not worried about that.
Councillor Parkhurst.
Yes, Chair, I'm happy to accept that change. Thank you.
So that's the substantive motion now, Chair.
Rightio. So we're going to take the vote on it. All those in favour, please raise your hand in the room.
Nine, no, that's 20, and he's back, so that's 34 in the room.
Online also, please raise your hands if you're in favour. Online, so that's 46 in favour. All those in the room that are against, please raise your hand. All those online against, please raise your hand. And for clarity, any abstentions both in the room and online?
None, Chair. So 46 for, 6 against, 0 abstentions.
So that's carried. Thank you. Right, we go on to agenda item number 9, and that's the review of constitution updates relating to LGPS good governance changes. And once again, I'm going to invite Phil Latham to come in on this one.
Thank you, Chair. This is similar to the previous item on the agenda. It's the UK government that are introducing a number of legislative changes to the governance of the LGPS. So I'll take members to page 131 of the pack. which is the recommendations in terms of we're asking council to approve changes to the constitution, which means we'll be in line with the new requirements. The constitution changes itself are all contained in Appendix 1. Again, there was a recommendation number 2 there around delegations, and again, as explained previously, we've only just had that statutory guidance, so we just want to see if there's any minor changes, tweaks or changes we need to make now we've received that. Otherwise, I'd refer members to paragraph 103 of the report on page 132, which outlines the main changes to the constitution, but maybe just give a little more colour to that. If you give me, I will read more from a document here. This is all new to me as well. I want to make sure I do get it correct. So the new statutory LGPS officer, the new regulations require administrating authorities to appoint an LGPS senior officer to act as a single responsible person for the management of the LGPS fund. Unlike many funds, the Clwyd Pension Fund has a head of pension fund who has acted as a single responsible officer for many years. So this change is mostly formalising the role that already exists and ensuring the head of pension fund has all the required responsibilities and delegations required to meet the new regulations. And I think that's outlined within the pack in detail on page 137. There's also now a requirement for a new independent person. The regulations introduce a new independent person role for LGPS governance. The independent person is intended to provide external independent support and challenge the fund's decision-making arrangements by advising and assisting the pension fund committee and the LGPS senior officer. The role does not replace the pension fund committee, local pension board officers or other professional advisors. It adds an additional layer of independent assurance and constructive challenge. The fund for many years is an independent advisor. It's expected that that role will be replaced by the independent person to comply with the new regulations. Again, more details on page 137. Another major change by the government is around knowledge and skills of pension fund committee and officers. New legal standards for knowledge and skills will apply to members of the pension fund committee and relevant officers, which mirror those already in place for the pension board. The constitution changes ensure these requirements are set out in the committee's terms of reference, and that's set out in detail on page 141. Closely linked to that, some of the changes we have made as regard, or recommending, I should say, is the in terms of the terms of office. So previously, FCC members of the committee, including the chair, were appointed annually. In order to make continuity of membership of the committee and to build a body of expertise, we've updated the constitution to have a term of officer for committee members, which runs until the next ordinary election. This brings FCC members in line with terms of office for co-opted members from Wrexham and Denbighshire, and that's closely linked to this statutory need for knowledge and skills to try to bring that continuity. Regulations also bring in a number of policies and strategy changes. These including a legal requirement now to have a conflict of interest policy. The fund already has conflict of interest policy and all the policies already mentioned here. But it might be we will simply need to update to be consistent with new regulation wording. I think there's some details on page 144. And finally, there's now a requirement for an independent governance review. The constitution changes also give the committee explicit responsibility for commissioning and considering an IGR, as it become known, which is required to be completed broadly every 3 years by the new regulations. I think that's covered on page 146. So that's the external scrutiny, if you wish, from government. And I've just looked at the statute guidance. We'll either be gold or green, but you will be publicly recorded. The governance will be publicly recorded and scored. Yeah, that's all I particularly wanted to highlight there.
A couple of things that I just need to bring out, Chair, if we can. The creation of this role of the LGPS senior officer, it creates a new statutory officer role with all the sorts of powers you'd expect around being able to require resources and so on and so forth. Again, those statutory officer roles are specified in the Constitution, and that's why we were bringing it to you today. Term of office for pension fund members is important. There's a couple of committees where we have a prior training requirement. That's increasingly common now to reflect the specialist natures of these. And as you'll have seen this morning, the pension fund is certainly a specialist committee. So undertaking the training and not being able to participate until that training has been completed is important. In terms of the term of office, I mean, we've tried to do this with the Governance and Audit Committee, perhaps with a bit less success. So to have continuity of office for a whole term, I think we've only had one member who's been on it throughout as a councillor. So we've tried a slightly different form of wording. Again, as you've seen this morning, having time over the whole period of a council term to build up knowledge and experience in relation to pension fund matters will be important. We'll have to work out as we go along how that translates when we try and do political balance. But I think it is possible. How I see it working, Chair, and hopefully councillors will be assured by this, is that what we would do is if we specified somebody May 27, we specify that these councillors will be on the Clwyd Pension Fund Committee, that should they subsequently move group, they will effectively just carry that seat with them. And we try to do that as much as we can now. So when people move group, we try and let them take their seats with them. It doesn't always work. But we would, there is a degree of flexibility, as you will know, because you're all quite expert now on political balance. There is a degree of flexibility, as you know, in terms of the allocations. And as I always say within my report, the rounding up and the rounding down is where we can exercise a measure of discretion. So it might not always be possible, but I think if we set out with that as our intention, and members bear that in mind when we do subsequently come on to do variations around political balance, then we should be able to make that work more often than not. In the majority of cases, we should be able to make that work, and hopefully, Chair, that will be to the benefit of both the members on the committee, who get to build up experience and thus are confident and comfortable exercising their responsibilities on the committee. And if it's to the benefit of the committee, then it will be the benefit to, hopefully, to the benefit of all of us who are members of the pension fund, because we will have informed and experienced people making decisions about our future financial well-being.
Thank you. Councillor Chris Biffle.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. From the 30th of June, yesterday, the government has introduced through legislation a number of new requirements and statutory guidance which are intended to improve the governance arrangements of local government pension schemes, referred to as good governance requirements. Flintshire County Council is a local government pension scheme administering authority responsible for administering the Clwyd Pension Fund. The report, as we noted, proposes the changes to the Council's constitution to incorporate the new legislative requirements, including the appointment of and the responsibilities relating to the new statutory local government pension scheme senior officer, incorporating the role of the new independent person, and lastly, updating knowledge and skills legal requirements that will be applicable to the Pension Fund Committee members and officers. I move the recommendations 1 and 2 on page 131, with the addition of the recommendation number 2, that these are reported back to the Clwyd Pension Fund Committee at its next meeting, which brings us in line with the previous discussion we had. There's no problems with that. We have to accept that sometimes decisions have to be made between meetings because of urgency, but it's right and proper that they're reported back to the next full committee in due course. So with that addition to recommendation number 2, I formally move, Chair.
Councillor Wren.
I'll second that proposal.
Councillor Palmer.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Chief Officer of Governance is correct. There is quite a lot of training involved in being a member of the Career Pension Fund. And it's ongoing every year, quite a lot within that year, maybe 2, 3, 4 sometimes. So continuity is paramount to that committee, and with knowledge bring continuity. So I fully support this proposal. Thank you.
Councillor Ibbotson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I invite members to turn in their hymn books to page 142 and look at point B, term of office. Now, the top bit of this in red says, in recognising the express wish of the Council but observing the requirements of the legislation for political balance, Flintshire County Council members will have the seats allocated in accordance with legislation to the appropriate political groups. Fine. So it's going to be done through political balance, and that if, for example, the Orange Party forms a majority in the next council, has 3 of the 5 seats for Flintshire County Council on the Career Pension Fund Committee, assigns 2 of those 3 seats to 2 of their members, and those 2 members subsequently leave the Orange Party and form a political group of 2, they would be entitled as a group to 0.14 of a seat on the Career Pension Fund, but would have 2. So clearly one of those seats is going to have to be reapportioned in line with political balance, because that's how political balance works. It wouldn't be legal and balanced if they had more than 1 seat. However, the other part of this, under point B, point 1, says that councillors will, and this is unequivocal, have a term of office for 5 years. Now, those 2 things are mutually contradictory. We might have an aim that people hold the seats for 5 years, but we cannot specify that because political balance laws do not allow us to require that. They just don't. So by putting this in this wording in our constitution, we are guaranteeing that we will breach our own constitution, which is not good governance. If the intention of this committee is that seats are assigned for a 5-year, the intention of this council is that seats are assigned for a 5-year term, that's the ambition, then we can move that as a recommendation to this, that it be the council's policy that we strive to, in exactly the same way as Councillor Lloyd moved a policy on how political balance for planning committee is calculated for groups with at least 5 seats. That didn't go in the constitution, but it is still applied in how this council sets political balance. That would be the way to do this, not put a rule into our constitution which we are basically guaranteed to breach, because breaching our own constitution should not be something that we set ourselves up for. And there's no way we could avoid breaching it, because the 2 points there are mutually contradictory, so we have to breach one or the other, however we do this. The second issue is on the following page, page 143, point E, chairing the committee. The chair of the committee will be elected for a 5-year term. Now, there is no way to remove a chair of this committee by council. There is no provision in the constitution for the chair of the Career Pension Fund Committee to resign. So they are in there for 5 years. Now, imagine a situation, if you will, where we appoint a chair of the Career Pension Fund Committee in 2027, and that person is tragically involved in a car accident and they fall into a coma. And they remain in a coma for the rest of the council term, but under the hybrid meeting rules, their family, in order to keep the councillor's allowance coming in, prop an iPad up in front of them once every 6 months. They are present, even if they are not awake. It could happen. That person would remain chair of the Career Pension Fund Committee irremovably for a 5-year term. It would not be conducive to good governance, especially given that the role of chair of this committee is not just chairing the meetings, but undertakes serious functions in the IMCO, the Joint Governance Committee, the mutual working groups with other funds, which cannot be fully delegated to anybody else. So if we say 5 years, no breaks, no safety clause, we are setting ourselves up for a situation where, if a councillor is appointed and sadly, has some kind of degenerative mental condition, Alzheimer's, whatever, which is not an inconceivable situation, they'll be there for 5 years. And even if they were minded to resign, they can't. But even if we say that they can resign, if that person is bloody minded in that they don't want to resign, we're stuck with it, which is not conducive. Having somebody in that position for 5 years where we can't make a sensible change is not conducive to good governance. So I move as an amendment that all the changes, those are the parts in red, in point B and E, are removed from the proposed changes. We go ahead with the rest, not with those. We are not legally obliged to make those changes in section B and E. And we avoid setting ourselves up for a situation where we enshrine poor governance into the operation of the fund.
And do we have a seconder for that, please? Councillor Swash. Okay, do we have anybody speaking to the amendment, please? And that's Councillor Coggins-Cogan.
Thank you, Chair. I recognise a similar issue that Councillor Ibbotson has identified, though perhaps not as imaginatively phrased, which I'm sure is a failing on my part. My primary focus was because it would be the council's intention to appoint someone for that term of office. If that office holder no longer commands the confidence of the committee, what mechanism is there to remove the office holder? Because for less dramatic reasons, I do think having someone appointed for that whole term who may turn out not to be competent in a variety of reasons is a worry. So what's the mechanism for that committee chair to be removed? Thank you, Chair.
There is none, Chair.
There we go. There isn't one. Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Chair. It's basically a very simple question I have in terms of council committees. There is, of course, the Standards Committee, which has members which sit for a fixed term. They are there to, as the guardians of the standards of this council, and they do their relevant investigations. Would it not be appropriate to understand that the Pensions Committee is perceived in a similar light? Now, given that no one has ever stood up here and objected to the political balance on the Standards Committee, the Standards Committee is not included as part of the political balance, as far as I can remember. Why don't we simply go and say that this committee is simply not part of the political balance in the same way that Standards is done? Simple question. I wonder if that is feasible, if it's possible, or what. Thank you.
Chair, Standards Committee is not a body to which the rules of political balance apply by legislation, not by choice. Members will know that where we seek to disapply the rules of political balance by choice, then they are subject to a veto in effect. So we could say that we would do that, but any political balance calculated on that basis would always be subject to the veto. And it's different from the Standards Committee in that regard. Standards Committee legislation just says Section 15 of the Local Government and Housing Act doesn't apply. End of, no discussion. And then the legislation goes on to say that Standards Committee members are appointed for X number of years. And so that is specified in legislation. This is not. This is about trying to achieve the slightly differently worded requirements in relation to the legislation, which is around knowledge and skills.
Okay, Councillor Ted Palmer, is this for the amendment? Yeah.
Yes, yes, thank you. Yes, Chair, thank you. Members of this committee, although our councillors, they're not representing the council per se on the committee. You have a fiduciary duty, and when I was there, the Carol McWilliam kept telling me, you don't have to. You're not there to think as a councillor. You're there to think as a member of the Clwyd Pension Fund Committee, and carry out your fiduciary duty. And it's in my opinion, it's apolitical. So I wouldn't worry about anything. Thank you.
Councillor Parkhurst.
Yes, Chair. We've seen nationally that even a Prime Minister who loses the confidence of his or her own party can be removed quite easily, it seems, mid-term, but yet the administration is reluctant to have the same mechanism for the chair of the pension fund. I think I heard correctly the Chief Officer, Governance Officer, saying that there wasn't such a mechanism. I think that is a serious omission, and therefore I will be supporting the amendment. Thank you.
Councillor Swash.
Thank you, Chair. I was just wondering if perhaps we could have some clarity from the monitoring officer in terms of whether it's his belief that the changes outlined in B, term of office, and I beneath it are mutually contradictory.
Whilst we've been talking, I've been trying to find the source that's at the back of my head somewhere that says that if you've got a fixed term of office, you calculate political balance arrangements around that. So if your constitution specifies that there is a fixed term of office, you calculate your political balance around it. I've been busy trying to look through the Local Government and Housing Act 89 and the subsequent regulations under it. And I've got a sneaking suspicion that the place where I've seen it written down is in something called Knowles on Local Authority Meetings, which isn't a book that I have online or accessible in front of me at the moment. Are the two incompatible? There will be circumstances where they might be. For the majority of the time, as I said when introducing and outlining this at the outset, I think for the vast majority of times they won't be, because we can round up and we have a lot of we have flexibility within the political balance rules to round up. The circumstance outlined where you're trying to round up a partial entitlement to 1 seat to 2 would always give me qualms. Our members will have come across this where we've tried, when we do political balance, if we do round up and we say, look, we need to round this group up and we need to round that one down, we don't ever try to round up one partial entitlement to 2 or a 1.5 to 3. So there might be circumstances where it's difficult to achieve, but I think they'd be fairly few and far between.
Okay, any other speakers to the amendment? Because if not, we'll go to Councillor Chris Biffle for the right to reply. Okay, Councillor Biffle.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I note the comments that have been made by Councillor Everton, and they have been made before, with due respect. I understand his wish to cover all eventualities, all happenings or occurrences, either real or imaginary. Yes, I can understand that. He's got a tidy mind and he wants everything specifically stated here. But these things do happen. People do die in office sometimes. People do actually move from one party to another. We've seen a lot of that in this council. These situations do happen, and we deal with them when they occur, right? When they occur. But in terms of trying to ensure some sort of stability in the Clwyd Pension Fund Committee, And we've heard today, you know, people who said, I was a member, I used to be a member, I've served on this committee. We've had a lot of churn over the years, and that's understandable when we were investing a great deal in training members to bring them up to standards to deal with particular issues which face that particular committee. It's pretty pointless at the end of the day when we have chopping and changing of committee membership from meeting to meeting, and that shouldn't happen, with due respect. And I think we should all have more respect for our responsibilities on whichever committees we sit, have some sort of commitment to them, really, with due respect. So I don't think we can cover all bases. People will become ill, they will be incapacitated from time to time, and we have to deal with that, and we've done it over many, many years, not just this authority, but other authorities, other bodies too. Life goes on, and the committee functions and duties have to continue, and we will deal with those as and when they occur. And I don't think we need this sort of written down in red writing in the Constitution. These things can be dealt with and are dealt with on a frequent basis. I move the recommendations with the addition that I mentioned in terms of recommendation to that the changes are reported back to the Career Pension Fund Committee at its next meeting. I formally move, Chair.
Just to reassure members, we are going to be voting on the amendment, not the original recommendations. Just bear with us.
Chair, going to step outside of process now, just to try and get to a good outcome, or what might be a good outcome. Phil can come in a minute about the chair. In relation to the tension between the wish to have a term of office for 5 years and the requirements of political balance, I'm going to make a suggestion, if I might. And I'm not allowed to move amendments, so this is a suggestion, Chair, about how we might find a middle way. Clearly, what Council wants to do is to make, or it doesn't sound like anybody's disagreeing with the wish to have people serve for as long as possible within the legislative requirements that we have upon us. So rather than dismissing all of the changes to that paragraph B, which would leave us with the situation that we have at the moment, perhaps if paragraph B were to say words to the effect that, if I have paragraph B in front of me, this is going to be easier. Term of office, it says it is the express wish of the council that there should be continuity of membership and so on and so forth. The second paragraph, I think, or the second part of paragraph B is the issue. In recognising the express wish of the council, but observing the requirements of the legislation for political balance, Flintshire County Council will have the seats allocated in accordance with the legislation to the appropriate political groups, but will, insofar as possible, seek to ensure continuity of service for the whole council term. Or insofar as legally possible, seek to have continuity of service for the whole of the council term. That might enable us to get to a point where we're able to reconcile our intentions and the legislation.
Okay.
Councillor Ibbotson has his hand up, Chair.
Councillor Ibbotson.
Madam Chair, I'm grateful for your discretion in allowing me to speak again, and obviously after the right of reply. I am very sympathetic to what the monitoring officer has just said, and if you will allow me to reopen this and change what I have proposed to reflect better what the monitoring officer has said, then we might manage to get to a compromise here. I would suggest that the way to do this, if you are prepared to allow that, Madam Chair, is that we put that wording that the monitoring officer has set out. And so I would suggest that this is the first paragraph beginning, "It is the express wish of the council," from part B, and then the reference in what is now part 1 underneath, that councillors have a term of office, in the recommendations rather than in the constitution. So we set it out as the policy of this council, and I claim as precedent here the motion moved by Councillor Richard Lloyd in respect of Planning Committee on a previous constitutional issues motion, whereby Councillor Lloyd moved that every group with 5 members must have at least 1 seat on Planning Committee. That was moved as policy within the recommendations of a thing. And obviously, when designing political balance, officers are bound to follow that policy. It does not need to be in the Constitution because the Constitution is a set of rules rather than a set of wishes. It would seem to me that it would nest better as policy than in the Constitution. So we would still have it as the express policy of this council that members should be appointed where possible and legal for a 5-year term. Political balances will be drawn up on that basis, that people do not move out the pension fund committee unless it is not legally possible to keep them there. But that we don't include that within the Constitution, we include it as policy. So at your discretion, Madam Chair, and I appreciate that we are now some way outside the normal process for considering this, but in order to get to a compromise, I would be willing to move that, possibly in order to keep constitutional, by removing my earlier proposition and moving that, if you, with the changes to E as previously suggested.
So, Chair, where does I hear the question? Where does that take us in the room? And forgive me, as the debate has gone on, I've been listening to members, and as you know, from time to time, we do try to help the council to achieve consensus on issues. You've got 2 separate issues. One's about the chair, and I think Mr. Latham needs to give the council some advice in relation to that, to put a gloss on an advice that I gave earlier. And you've then got the issue around political balance in the amendment. What I would suggest, Chair, in how you deal with that is that you deal with those 2 things separately, and you take votes on the amendment in 2 parts to give members the opportunity to reflect that they might support part but not both. What that would do, Chair, is term of office. It would be that the term of office, we say we want it to be 5 years, and we will you do whatever we can within the legislation to achieve a term of office for 5 years without breaching the rules of political balance. That members might like that as a compromise, they might not. Do you know, that's not my role. I give advice. That would, I think, help ease what I referred to earlier as the tension between council's wishes and the legislation to which we are subject. And then, Chair, you've got the second point about chairmanship and about whether the chair should serve for 5 years. I think Mr. Latham was saying that if a chair were to lose capacity, then it would be possible to report to the pensions regulator. So it's not something that we have as our own mechanism, which is the basis on which I gave an answer about not being able to remove the chair. But there's something external.
I try to explain, and again, statutory guidance has just appeared. It applies to the chair, but it applies to all members of the committee going forward. They have to prove that they have the knowledge and skills, and they have to prove to me now, sorry, if I am the statutory officer, they have to prove that to me. I have to be satisfied each individual chair or not meet the requirements. If not, there's a requirement for me to report that matter to the pensions regulator, because that will be considered a breach of the regulation. That's my reading of how the regulations are written. Now, I don't want to be in a position to do that. Basically, it's quite simple, but there's more of a risk in that if there's lots of turnover around that.
No more discussion on it, thank you. We're going to go to the amendments, pluralise that as advised by the monitoring officer.
Point of order, Madam Chair. I'm not sure what I'm voting for here.
But this is going to be explained just now. If you give me a minute, Councillor Evans is just explaining that the monitoring officer will explain what we are voting on now.
As just reward or punishment for chipping in at the last minute, for which I do apologise, the chair has given me the responsibility to explain clearly to you what you are voting on. Hospital pass, I think. So, the chair wants to take the amendments in two parts, so that council can express views about one or the other, rather than having to take both together. So the first part is about term of office. If you are for the amendment, then the term of office would be, rather than a fixed term of office, whatever, come hell or high water, the term of office would be that we will seek to, insofar as legally possible, appoint members for 5 years. Insofar as we can, under the political balance rules, we will always try and ensure that members of the Pension Fund Committee are appointed for 5 years. That is the effect of the amendment, the first part of the amendment, Chair.
And so, all those in favour of that part of the amendment, please raise your hand in the room.
Okay. That's quite heartening, Chair, because that does look like, despite messing up our procedures, I have at least correctly divined the will of the people in the room.
And those online as well, if you are in favour of that part of the amendment.
So, thank you, Chair. I think I see at least one person that didn't raise their hand, Chair.
So, any against? And any abstentions online and in the room, please?
So that's 3 abstentions, Chair. But
thank you.
Out of
that amendment was carried. And the second part of the amendment.
So the second part of the amendment, Chair, is as was moved by Councillor Ibbotson originally, which is that the Chair should serve for annually, in effect, it would revert to, which is what the provision says at the moment in the Constitution, rather than, as is proposed within the report, that the Chair should serve for a term of 5 years.
So all those in the room in favour of that part of the amendment, please raise your hands.
Nine, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22 in the room, yeah.
All those in online in favour, please raise your hand. Any against in the room? Any against online?
2 online.
And then for clarity, abstentions both in the room and online. Thank you.
Sorry, could we just indicate in the room again, please, Chair? because my numbers don't add up back to the number of people in the who were present in the meeting. This is abstentions, Chair, just abstentions.
The abstentions in the room, please.
Thank you. 9, 10, 11, 12. 1 on line 30. Chair, the numbers in favour of the second part of the amendment are 33 for, 3 against, and 13 abstentions.
So that's carried also.
Yes, so that now becomes the substantive motion, Chair, if there are any further amendments.
Does anybody like to speak on the substantive? Councillor Coggins-Cogan.
Thank you, Chair. Not mine. The question I had was about the requirement for the training, that it says the committee members won't be able to participate in the meetings. I just want a clarification on what that means, whether that means they're barred from attending, barred from speaking, or barred from voting. So what does not to participate mean? And secondly, in your role now as a statutory officer, you have the same requirement as the monitoring officer, which is that you can report to council and say, I require X amount of resources to properly staff and resource, the pension fund. As I understand it, the monitoring officer in that role, that report is then sent to the Democratic Services Committee, and they have to give it consideration, or I think goes to full council actually. They can give it consideration, but they can deny the request from the monitoring officer. They just have to consider it. How does this mechanism work under your statutory post? Thank you, Chair.
Actually, I'll take that one. It's the same. Clearly, the expectation of the legislation is that it puts council in quite an acute position, shall we say, where you've got statutory officers saying we need more resource to be able to do this properly, but it is always up to council to reject that. Having properly considered it, to reject it, and under the code, in accordance with the code, to give reasons for rejecting officer advice.
Phil?
Thinking about this, trying to think about the answer to that, because all this is around separation and including. So the
Is it a point of order, Councillor? No, it hasn't. It hasn't. The vote on the amendment was taken, then not the substantive.
Thinking through the answer here, what I think is intended, certainly by the government, that this started as a separation consultation when it first started, to completely separate it from the council altogether, and it's quite clear that it's the Fluid Pension Fund Committee, based on the LGPS officer recommendations, to determine the resources that are needed. And that is delegated by council already through council delegations for the council to delegate that to the Fluid Pension Fund Committee. So I don't see personally how these arrangements would work, that then you go back to council to ask for those resources, which I think it all back to a different authority, which I'm not familiar with. Apologies, I focus very much on the pension fund. I was a bit confused how that would work.
And Chair, just to give a bit of procedural advice, we voted on the amendment. The amendment becomes the substantive motion. There can then be further amendments or further debate about the substantive motion, and we will shortly, Chair, be going. I hope be going to a vote on the substantive motion.
So, are there any more speakers on this?
Chair, the first part of my question about what does participation mean in the meetings? If you're prohibited from participation, does that mean speaking, attending, voting?
I can't say I particularly thought about that, I must be honest, but I think I would have thought voting, because if you had just come to common sense, if you've got a new member of the committee, okay, they're not trained, you'll still want them, because that would be part of the training to come to the committee anyway, but they wouldn't be able to vote unless trained to vote on that matter. That was how I would interpret it, if that's okay.
That might be in the guidance that was published 2 days ago. Neither have we yet. Not in full. Sorry, when I say neither have we, Chair, we can hear that, people online can't, of course. I said it might be in the guidance, the councillor said he hasn't read that yet, and I said we hadn't either, because, or not in full.
Okay. Any more speakers? No. Right. So we're going to go to the recommendations now, which Gareth will again explain for you.
So, Chair, the substantive motion is now amended slightly in that the recommendations are, actually the recommendations I don't think are significantly changed, except to say that we include in the recommendation, perhaps as an additional recommendation, the wish to try and have continuity of service for 5 years for members of the Clwyd Pension Fund, but otherwise, Council approves the recommended changes to the Constitution, subject to all that we did around changing membership and the term of membership, and then the Council delegates any further non-substantial changes to myself in consultation with the head of Clwyd Pension Fund and the chair of the Pension Fund Committee. So it's we make the changes that we've agreed to the in accordance with the amendment, and then we make all the other changes that are in the report, and that then there's, you know, if there need to be minor changes to reflect that guidance, that statutory guidance, then I can do that in consultation with Mr. Latham and currently Councillor Bithell.
So and that will include to what I mentioned earlier on.
Councillor Bithell, can you, if you're able to, can you stand?
Yes, that will include too the suggestion that I made that we incorporate within recommendation 2 that any changes are reported back to the CPF committee at its next meeting. Okay, that's taken on board too. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
So that takes us to the vote. So everybody in the room in favour, please indicate by raising your hands now.
1, 2, 5, 6, 8.
Are we voting to include the chair being appointed annually or for 5 years? I thought we'd all agreed it would be annually, but I didn't hear that in the Chief Officer's summary.
No, yes, it is. Chair would be annual, sorry.
Yeah. Yeah. So we'll start again. Everybody in favour in the room, please raise your hand.
11, 12. In the room.
Those online in favour, please raise your hand.
Right, so that's 35.
Any against in the room, please raise your hand.
3.
Any against online, please raise your hand.
4.
And then for clarity, any abstentions both in the room and online, please do raise your hand now.
9, 1 in. So that's 39 for, 7 against, 1 abstention, Chair.
So that's carried. Thank you very much. At this point, I think we're going to take a break for lunch. Like you back here by 1:30, please.